Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlie Herman and welcome back to Charlie's Cruise Tips and Reviews. So today is the video I've been promising for a while, why cruising solo is more expensive out of Port Canaveral than cruising out of Port of Miami. So after many solo cruises out of both Port of Miami and Port Canaveral, I've come to realize that cruising solo out of Port Canaveral is going to cost a lot more money than cruising out of Port Miami ever will. There are different options when it comes to flying in for the cruise, where to stay, how to get to the cruise port, how to get from the airport to your hotel where you decide to stay, and then getting from your hotel the morning of the cruise to the cruise port itself. There are many different factors, and by the end of this, I'll be able to explain why, and you might understand a little bit more why cruising out of Port Canaveral will cost you more money than out of Port of Miami. Now, I understand some people might say, well, Miami is a major city, it's going to be expensive. Anywhere you go to Miami is going to be more expensive than any other cruise port in the state of Florida, more than Port Canaveral, Tampa, Port Everglades. But to be honest, that's really not true. And when I'm done with this, you might understand a little bit more why I'm saying going to Port Canaveral is more expensive than Port Miami when you add up all the different costs together and you compare the two options together. Okay, so here we go. First and foremost, if you're someone like me and you fly in for your cruise, you have to get on a plane, you have to pack a bag. Sometimes you have to check a bag, which I try not to do, but it is what it is. So that's one thing you also have to consider is how long is it going to take, and this, that, whatever. But let's forget all that for a second. I'm going to use Norwegian Cruise Line as an example for a Sunday cruise because I've done that numerous times on both cruise at Port Canaveral and Port of Miami, cruising out of there on a Sunday, especially solo. So that's the best example I can do. So I'm going to use flying in on Friday and Saturday as an example for both different cruise ports, and because I have done it both times. So when you fly for your cruise in Port Canaveral, there are three airports that are close to Port Canaveral. There's Melbourne International Airport, which is the closest, but they have the least amount of flights. They literally have two airlines that serve them on a regular basis, American Eagle and Delta Connection. Delta has 4 flights a day to Atlanta, and that's it. They don't fly anywhere else. And American Eagle has 3 daily flights to Charlotte, and they have weekly seasonal nonstop service twice weekly. So it sounds like on the weekends between Melbourne International Airport and Washington National Airport, but that's on American Eagle too. So keep in mind, all these flights are smaller regional jets, so they're still jet aircrafts, but they don't hold as many people. So keep that in mind that because of the convenience of this port and there are so few flights, those flights are going to be really expensive for that reason. So you might want to take that option out right away. The next option is Orlando Sanford International Airport, again, which is not another good option because it is north of the city of Orlando. It's in Sanford. However, there is only one airline that flies into that airport, and that is Allegiant Airline. So if you don't live in the city where Allegiant flies out of, they are not even an option. For example, they do not fly out of here in New York, any of the 3 New York State airports. They don't fly out of Long Island MacArthur Airport. So if you live where I live in New York, they're not even an option. So that's something you have to throw right out the window. In some places, they're not even an option. So you have to consider that. And then the third and the largest airport of the three is very well known, Orlando International Airport. Now, Orlando International Airport is the most served airport in Central Florida and is a good 45 minutes away from the port itself, Port Canaveral. So keep that in mind. It is also not only the most served, but it's one of the furthest ones away. But it is the most served airport in Central Florida. It is served by every domestic carrier in the country and several international carriers. It is a hub and focus city for JetBlue Airways, Spirit Airlines, Frontier Airlines, Southwest Airlines, Breeze Airlines, which has started in the last couple of years. They've made a hub and focus city out of Orlando. Silver Airways, which is a smaller commuter airline, which serves mostly Florida, the Bahamas, parts of the Caribbean, and Charleston, South Carolina. That's a hub for them as well. But as I said, they are a commuter airline. But the funny thing is, none of the big 3 legacy airlines, American, Delta, or United have a hub at Orlando International Airport. So if you want to fly one of your legacy airlines, such as one of those three, you have to live in one of their hub cities. Otherwise, you're going to be changing planes in one of their other hub cities, and that could be going out of your way, or it could cause all kinds of craziness because with flight delays, this, that, whatever. So if you have the option of flying nonstop on one of the other airlines, as I said, JetBlue, Southwest, I would never wish Spirit on any airline. On anyone, should I say. I've flown them before once in my life. I made that mistake flying them for an hour and a half flight from LaGuardia to Myrtle Beach. I will never do that. Do that to myself again. So couldn't even recommend Spirit to anyone else. But like I said, these are the options to flying into Orlando International Airport. But keep in mind, it is the only major airport in Central Florida, and everyone flies into that airport for just not cruising, but because for obvious other reasons. Walt Disney World, Universal, SeaWorld, the Orlando Convention Center. Orlando is a major city now, so there's a lot of business there. There are a lot of sporting events there because they have the Wide World of Sports complex at Disney, if it's still called that, and they have so many different sporting events there. Youth league sports, championships, tournaments. So keep that in mind when you're flying in for your cruise, especially certain time of the year. You're not the only one flying in there. So those flights get really expensive really quickly, and you need to book those flights right away. So keep that in mind when cruising out of Port Canaveral. There is really, unless, as I said, if you don't mind changing planes in Atlanta or Charlotte and paying more money flying to Melbourne for the convenience, or you live in the city where Allegiant flies out of, you don't have much of a choice, and that's just going to make the airfare skyrocket, especially if it's a last minute booking for the cruise, or you don't do this, you book the cruise later on and you would like to. Keep that in mind that the airfares are going to cost you more money because there's only one real option when you're flying for your cruise, when you're flying Port Canaveral. If you don't have, as I said, you live in a city where Allegiant flies out of, or you don't mind changing planes. And trust me, you don't want to change planes in Atlanta. I've had the pleasure of doing that, unfortunately, in my life, and you don't want to ever have to do that. Okay, so when you go to Miami, cruising out of Port of Miami, okay, there are three options to fly in to Southeast Florida for your cruise. The first one is Palm Beach International Airport, which I know like the back of my hand. My grandparents were your typical New York snowbirds. They spent the summers and springs here in New York and the falls and winter in Florida. They were in first Lake Worth and then Boynton Beach. So I've been to that airport many times. I still fly into that airport sometimes to see some friends who live in the Palm Beach area, and I can still walk around that airport blindfolded. That is the smallest of the three airports. It's about an hour and a half away from Miami. They are served by all the major domestic carriers, as all legacy carriers: United, Delta, American, United. JetBlue flies in there to most of the northeastern hubs. They fly in. Southwest flies to their hub cities from there. So they have the least amount of flight options, but all major airlines do fly into that terminal. There are multiple daily flights especially to the Northeast. Delta has multiple dailies to Boston and Detroit hubs. There are multiple daily flights to obviously Atlanta, their biggest hub. That's only an hour and 15-minute flight. New York JFK has 3 flights a day. LaGuardia has 3 flights a day. American has service to all 3 of their hub cities except to New York JFK or LaGuardia, but they are starting resuming their seasonal service next in November through, I believe it's April, from LaGuardia to West Palm Beach. So keep an eye on that if you live in the New York City area and you want to go down to Florida for a cruise. They are offering seasonal service, but out of LaGuardia, not out of JFK. So just keep that in mind. United only serves 3 of their hubs from West Palm Beach. Newark is daily for obviously the New York, New Jersey market to Florida market. Has seasonal service to their other hubs such as Chicago O'Hare, Washington Dulles, and Houston. They do not, however, serve, I believe, Denver at all or San Francisco. They don't do LA at all. So keep that in mind if you want to fly United. Those options are limited as well out of which airport. Now, the next airport you can consider, and this is a bit closer to the city of Miami, it's only 20 miles away from the port city, is Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. It is a hub city for both JetBlue and Spirit Airlines. As I said what I said about Spirit. I'm not going back into that. I'm a New Yorker, so I fly JetBlue all the time. If you want to fly into Fort Lauderdale and avoid the craziness of Miami International Airport, JetBlue is a great option. It is a focus city for Southwest, Legion, as well as a focus city for Legionnaire. As I said, if you fly into say that Legion flies into, they're an option from what I understand. I've never flown them before because they're not an option for me. They're a hub for Silver Airways and a focus city for Southwest, which I already mentioned. Both Delta, United have multiple daily nonstops to all their hub cities, as well as Delta has to Cincinnati around their airports. American only serves 3 cities from this airport. That's Philadelphia, Charlotte, and Dallas from Fort Lauderdale, with seasonal service to Chicago and here in Washington National. I don't know why they don't offer more flights to Chicago here or Washington, especially from Fort Lauderdale, probably because of the proximity to Miami International Airport. And I'm going to go into that in a moment. Why the proximity matters. They don't want to take business away from Miami. Excuse me. The third option and the best option, I think, closest option to the port is Miami International Airport, which is in the city of Miami. It's in the westernmost part of the city. It's actually the end of the airport field is the city limits between the city of Miami and I believe Hialeah, but I could be wrong on that, which town it borders, but it is on the westernmost part of the city. Miami International Airport is a hub city for American Airlines. That's why they have such few service out of Fort Lauderdale International Airport, because when the two airports are so close to each other, only 20 miles away, 40 minutes away, you don't want to take business away from your hub city by giving it to another airport, which is only 40 minutes away. So if you live in between the two airports, you're going to go to Miami because there's more options. So that makes sense. So there are so many options flying to Miami International Airport because Miami is a hub city for American Airlines. It's also well served by Delta and United to all their hub cities with multiple daily flights. JetBlue flies into their 2 hub cities in the Northeast from Miami, both John F. Kennedy and International Airport and Boston Logan International Airport. Frontier has a bit of a presence there. Southwest had started service out of there to a few of their hub cities. Spirit is starting to add service out of there. So all domestic airlines do fly out of Miami International Airport. So getting a flight, no matter where you live, into Miami International Airport is not a problem. It's just your choices are a bit limited because it is a hub city. However, there are choices, and you can get to Miami International Airport really easily. So if you don't mind changing planes, that's one thing. But if you want a nonstop flight, it's not an issue. So keep that in mind. You have more options flying into when you want to go to Miami, and then you do Port Canaveral. And like for someone like me who knows southeastern Florida, you can get a flight into certain places for half the cost for half the price it would be into Miami International Airport. Literally, I've seen airfares where it's $50, $60 less per person to fly into Fort Lauderdale or West Palm Beach to Miami International Airport, and getting from those 2 cities down to Miami is not that difficult. It's actually, you have better, cheaper options. Commuting there using public transportation is somewhat cheaper than taking public transportation here in New York, but I'm going to get to that one later. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about is getting from your airport once you fly in for your cruise to your hotel. Now, in Port Canaveral, there are not that many options from Orlando International Airport or Melbourne airports to the Port Canaveral airport hotels. I'm not even talking about Sanford Airport because I've never flown in there, so I don't know any of the options there. I'm not even going to think about it because it's, like I said, it's not an option for me. They're going to Port Canaveral, you either can take, your options are Uber, Lyft, share shuttle, or rental car. Now, I'm just going to straight up say, if you are cruising solo, don't rent a car. It's going to be the most expensive option. It's going to be a lot more money than any other option, unless you literally don't think you don't mind spending the money, which I would not recommend. Don't even make renting a car an option if you're cruising by yourself. Now, when I cruise with my friends, we cruise into Port Canaveral, and like there's 3 or 4 of us who fly in Orlando. Yeah, we split a rental car, because if you split a rental car for like 2 days, it comes about to about anywhere between $25 and $50 a person. So it's worth it because you split the cost. But If you're one person, you incur the whole cost. That's the rental car fee, the insurance, gas, sun pass. So I would just throw all that out because that's going to cost you a whole lot more money. And then you also have to return the car the morning of the cruise and then get from the rental car drop off to the cruise port, which I'm not going to go into. I've had that issue a couple of times, so I'm not even going to go into that one. Okay, so the option I use most when I cruise port out of Port Canaveral solo is I use the Airport Canaveral shuttle. It's called and that's what it's called, Airport Canaveral shuttle from Orlando International Airport to my hotel in Cape Canaveral. It cost me about $25-$30, including tax. However, you have to understand this shuttle isn't like a super shuttle or a gold shuttle, those old school hotel shuttles. These ones have specific pickup times. So you have to coordinate it whatever time your flight arrives, and you could be waiting at the airport a good hour and a half after your flight arrives for the next shuttle. My flight got in at 10 in the morning. The next shuttle wasn't until 11:30, so you have to keep in mind you could be waiting a while at the airport for the shuttle because they have certain pickup times. But if you can book this in advance, you can make a reservation. They'll be ready for you. They'll tell you when you're getting your pickup, when you're going to get dropped off at your hotel. But keep in mind it is a share shuttle ride, so you may not be the first drop off. So it could, while it is a 45-minute drive to the port city, it could be more like an hour and a half before you get to your hotel once you're in the shuttle because of all the pickups and drop-offs they do. So keep that in mind. If you're pressed for time and you just want to get to your hotel, it might not be the best option, but it is definitely the cheapest option. This by far is the cheapest option. Other options are Uber and Lyft, and this will cost you anywhere between $40 and $100. Okay, between Orlando International Airport and whether you stay in Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach, those are going to be really expensive, and it's almost as expensive as renting a car. Not as expensive, but keep in mind how much money you're going to spend on Uber once you get to wherever your hotel is, because there is not a lot of options around there for transit. So keep in mind that that's just one Uber or Lyft ride. Then you got to take one the next day and back and forth if you so choose to leave your hotel or not. So keep that in mind. That is going to be at least $40 to $100 Uber ride, especially if you book within the airport itself, because when you pick up an Uber inside the airport at the pickup center, they always tend to charge more money for whatever reason because it is a prime location. Okay, so when you cruise out of Port of Miami, there are several options, especially public transportation options, to get from all three southeastern Florida airports to the city of Miami or Miami Beach, depending wherever you decide to stay. While West Palm Beach International Airport is the furthest airport from Miami, it still has a couple of good public transportation options to get from Palm Beach International Airport, or as I call it, West Palm Beach. That's the technical name, Palm Beach International Airport, but if you're someone like me, you're just used to calling it West Palm Beach Airport to Miami or Miami Beach. The best option, other than renting a car, which I said many times don't do, especially in southeastern Florida, you're really not going to need it, is taking the Florida Brightline train from West Palm Beach Station to downtown Miami's Central Station. Now, the one downer about this, there is no shuttle from the airport to the Brightline station. So you will probably have to take an Uber, which should cost you about $10-$15. So it's not that much. It's not going to price gouge you. It's not going to cost you a whole lot of money to get from one to the other. The Brightline trains fares from West Palm Beach to Miami in their business class cars. They have two classes of service: business class and first class. Okay, from West Palm Beach to Miami, one way in your business class car, one way is between $34 and $45, depending on the time of day you're going and how quickly you book the ticket. If you book in advance, definitely. If you book it last minute, it's going to cost you more money, probably mostly the $45. If you decide to go in the first class car and give yourself a little bit more luxury, a little bit more leg room, a little bit more their premium services, it's going to cost you between $70 and $110. $110 for that train ticket one way, but keep in mind that is still less money than renting a car. Okay. The next other public transportation option is the Tri-Rail commuter train from West Palm Beach Station to either Miami International Airport Station or Miami Central Station. Now I'm going to get into how you get from one train to the other in a minute because you do have to change trains. If anyone knows about changing commuter trains, it's me. We have changed at Jamaica here in New York, but I'm sure at every major city, if you have a commuter rail, you have a major transfer point. Well, there is one here where you would transfer from one train to the other, but I'll get into that one a little bit. This ticket from West Palm Beach Station to either Miami International Airport or Miami Central Station will cost one way $8.75. So it is much cheaper than the Brightline. However, it is a commuter rail, so it's about a 2-hour trip opposed to an hour and 30 minutes on the Brightline. But this one, the Tri-Rail does have a free shuttle from West Palm Beach International Airport, Palm Beach International Airport to the West Palm Beach train station. So keep that in mind. If you want to save some money on Uber and you want to save some money on train and you don't mind how long it takes you to get to Miami for your cruise, then this is probably the best option because it's the cheapest option. Now, what I was going to say, what Miami Central Station is and Miami International Airport Station, there was a station in between Miami International Airport Station and Miami Central, which is called Metro Rail, Tri-Rail Transfer. Now, that station, you get off the train there, the original train continues on to Miami International Airport, which is the end of the line, and then about 10 minutes later, there's a shuttle train, which comes and it's about a 20-minute ride to downtown Miami Central Station. So keep that in mind. You have about a 5-10 minute wait in between trains, and then another 20 minutes if you want to go straight downtown. If you want to take the train straight to Miami International Airport Station, when you get off there, I've done it many times, you can take a taxi, you can take an Uber to your hotel, and it's actually a lot cheaper if you would get it in the airport itself because it's considered not inside the airport, but at the train station. So keep that in mind. Okay, so moving on, getting to from Fort Lauderdale International Airport, getting to Miami or Miami Beach is about 20 miles, as I said before, so 40 minutes door to door. There are several options. The first option I'm going to suggest is that I've used many times is the Go Airport Shuttle Share. Right now, it just can take up to an hour and a half to get from West Palm Beach down to Miami because of all the different stops you make. Because keep in mind, it is a shared shuttle ride. You are not the only person in that van, so there could be 2 or 3 stops before you get to your destination to make it. Keep that in mind. Now, this ride, it has gone up a little bit. It used to cost about $32 per person, but now because of inflation and cost of gas and everything, it's gone up to $40.50 when you book. But keep in mind that it's still a pretty good rate to go from an airport to a city center for one person because it is based on per person. They don't have group rates or anything like that, so keep that in mind. The next option, which I've already talked about before, is the Florida Brightline. Now, at Fort Lauderdale International Airport, they do, from all the terminals, have a free shuttle service from all the terminals to the Fort Lauderdale Brightline station, and it's included in the price of your train fare, which I find pretty cool, very nice. So when you buy your train fare, if you're flying to Fort Lauderdale International Airport, you just have to look for the Brightline shuttle, and they'll take you right to the train. All you have to do is show them the confirmation for your ticket, which is very easy, just on your phone or a printed confirmation, and there you go. The ticket from Fort Lauderdale to Miami, one way in their business class, will run you anywhere between $29 and $39, and their first class fare will cost you anywhere between $49 and $89. And this is about a 38-minute trip between the two stations. It used to be about a straight 30 minutes door to door, but they added a stop in between the two in Ventura, so that adds about 5-10 minutes to the trip because the train stop at these stations about like 3, 4, 5 minutes. It's not like it's more like when you take Amtrak where you stop for 3, 4 minutes. It's not like a commuter rail where you stop for a minute then you get on going. So keep in mind you do have an extra stop in between the two, and now it's about used to be a 35-minute ride, now an extra 3-4 minutes ride to 38 minutes. The last option is something I already discussed, is the Tri-Rail commuter train. Now, the Tri-Rail commuter train, just like Palm Beach, has a free shuttle to the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport at Dania Beach Station. It used to be called the Fort Lauderdale International Airport or Dania Beach Station. I don't know when they changed the name. It doesn't sound right calling it the airport station at Dania Beach, but it is what it is. That train ride takes about 43 minutes to the Miami International Airport station, or to the Miami Central Station. Add 20 minutes to that, so about 63 minutes, and that only costs $3.75 one way. So keep that in mind. It's still a cheaper option. It won't take as long as it would from West Palm Beach. And if you don't, as I said, you get an Uber, you go to your hotel. If you don't mind taking public transportation, which I definitely don't, it's gonna save you a lot of money rather than an Uber or a Lyft. I don't even know how much those cost because I wouldn't even consider an option when you have these many different public transportation options. When you fly into Miami International Airport and you're staying in Miami or Miami Beach, there are so many different public transportation options. We're not even going to talk about shared shuttles. We're not going to talk about um, meter taxis you can take, rental cars don't even consider an option. We're going to discuss this in a second, but the best option as far if you're staying downtown Miami, I'm going to say if you're staying in downtown Miami, the best option is either the Metro, you take the Metro Rail to the Metro Mover. Now, the Metro Rail station's at Miami International Airport. That is where the orange line begins and terminates all the way to Dade south. Now, if you're going north, okay, so you can, if you're staying in downtown, such as the Brickell area, you can take the train straight there to the Brickell station. If you're staying downtown, you can take the Metro Rail to Government Center and then transfer to the free Metro Mover train, which is a loop around downtown Miami. So if you're staying on Biscayne Boulevard, at one of the downtown hotels, or in Bayfront Park at the Intercontinental, which I've stayed at a couple of times, that drops you right off there. Actually, the Bayfront Park station drops you off right in front of the hotel. It's right across the street, so it's a very cheap option. And the Metro Rail by itself only costs $2.25 a ride. So you buy a fare card for $2.25. You're staying downtown Miami. You're at your hotel in 15-20 minutes, half an hour at most. Once you do that option, it is the fastest option if you're staying in downtown Miami. Now, if you are staying in Miami Beach, here's another option. If you're in downtown Miami, I'm sorry, not Miami Beach, downtown Miami is served by 6 different Metro bus lines, including the 150 Miami Beach Express bus, which will take you directly from Miami International Airport into Miami Beach. It does not make any stops in between the two. The first stop will be on Alton Road right after you get off to cross the causeway, the Miami Beach Causeway, which is the bridge between the city of Miami and Miami Beach. So the route enters Miami Beach and makes its first stop at Alton Road, then continues down 40th Street and follows Indian Creek Drive, which eventually becomes Collins Avenue, and follows all the way down with selected stops all the way down to First Street and South Point. And the same as the Metro Rail, this bus ticket costs $2.25. Now, the bus does take longer, especially getting to Miami Beach. It can take you up to half an hour, 45 minutes on the bus, especially if you're staying in Mid Beach or just the beginning part of South Beach. It does take a little while longer, but it is the best and cheapest option. And if you only have a carry-on and a backpack like I do so many times, it is probably the cheapest and best option because you don't have a lot of things with you, especially when your carry-on is on wheels. Okay. The next option is such as Uber or Lyft. Okay, now Uber or Lyft, this tends to cost more money, especially if you're getting picked up in the airport area. So this will cost you more money. If you get picked up in the airport area, it's going to cost you about $40 to $50 to Miami Beach. Now, if you use now I have a trick that does save money, which I'm not going to tell you about because if I tell too many people about it, it's not going to work anymore and it's going to cost the same amount of money. So I do have a trick on how to save money there, but I'm not going to tell you about it because, as I said, if I tell too many people about it, people are going to get wise to it and it's going to cause the price of the Uber or Lyft to go up and then it won't work anymore. So if you take an Uber or Lyft ride to Miami Beach, it's going to cost you about $40 to $50. I wouldn't take an Uber or Lyft if you're staying in downtown Miami. I would use the public transportation options, as I mentioned already before, the bus or the train and to the Metro Mover. It just makes life a whole lot easier. And there's a lot of traffic in downtown Miami, so I would avoid that as much as possible by using the public transportation. The last public option for getting from Miami International Airport to your hotel in downtown or Miami Beach is a taxi cab, a regular yellow meter taxi cab, which is probably the most convenient option because you're not waiting forever for it. Every hotel airport has the taxi stand, as you all know, but unfortunately, it has now become the most expensive option getting from your airport to the hotel, especially to Miami Beach. My friend and I, back in December 2022, we took a taxi from Miami International to our hotel in South Beach. I did this many times. This is before COVID. I would take the taxi from Miami International to my hotel in Miami Beach and South Beach. Would never be more than $30 plus tip. This particular taxi ride cost us $70 and then tips are almost $75 for a 20-minute taxi ride. So as I said, it's become the most expensive option in Miami Beach if you're willing to spend that type of money on a taxi cab because you don't want to wait for an Uber or take the bus. Okay, keep that in mind. It is going to cost you a lot more money, but as I said, when you fly into southeastern Florida to Miami, to go to Miami for cruises, as I stated, there are more options to get to your port city than there is Port Canaveral, and as I stated, much more cheaper options, especially if you have plenty of time to get from one place to the other. Okay, one of the last things I'm going to talk about is where to stay when you go for your cruise and how to get from your hotel to the port the morning of the cruise. Okay, so when you stay in Port Canaveral, when you cruise, should I say, out of Port Canaveral, there aren't a lot of choices to stay that are pretty close to port to stay in. You can stay in downtown Orlando, Cape Canaveral, or Cocoa Beach. Now, in Orlando, International Drive, there are plenty of hotels, especially on International Drive in the downtown area, close to the parks. Like at the main gate for Universal and Disney, there are plenty of hotel options there, but keep in mind it is a good 45-minute to an hour drive from downtown Orlando just to Port Canaveral itself. It can take up to an hour. So the best way to go is not only to do the share shuttles, but they get pretty expensive, especially from Orlando, because you're not anywhere close to the port. While if you were in Cocoa Beach or Cape Canaveral, if you took one of those shuttles, cost you about 15, $20 at most. But from Orlando, it's going to cost you about anywhere about 40 to 50, and it could cost up to $100 a ride because I was checking it out the last time I cruised solo out of Port Canaveral. I thought about Orlando doing a day at one of the parks, and I saw how much it would cost me just the next day to get from one of those park area hotels or down to Port Canaveral in a shared shuttle. I'm like, no, not doing that. That's way too much money. I'd spend just as much money on as a hotel in Port Canaveral as I would as the shuttle. So no, not doing that. Um, the other option is Uber or Lyft, but one of those even can cost you about $40 to $50, if not more, a ride from downtown Orlando to Port Canaveral. And keep in mind, as I said, it's about a 45-minute to an hour drive. If you have an early pickup time or check-in time, should I say, you have to get picked up really early. For example, if you say your check-in appointment is at 10 a.m. and you know the cruise lines are really strict about that, I would not have an Uber pick you up later than 8:15, 8:30 to be safe because you don't know how port traffic is going to be. You don't know what traffic is going to be like trying to get in Orlando, how quickly the Uber is going to come once you order it. So you need to give yourself plenty of time, which means if you're getting picked up at 8:30, you have to be up and at them around 7 a.m. at the latest. So keep that in mind that the further you stay away from the port, the earlier you have to get up and the more time you have to give yourself to get to the cruise port that day. Okay, when you stay in Cape Canaveral, there are not too many hotels in Cape Canaveral. There are a few, but not too many hotel options within a few minutes of the port itself. There's literally one across from the port that's brand new. I didn't get the name of it. I think it was the home. I can't remember which one it was. It was either a Hampton Inn or it was a Homewood Suite or something like that. I don't remember, but it was literally brand new. But it was literally right across from the cruise port. But then it was close to nothing else. So keep that in mind. If you're staying there, you really can't leave the property because there's nothing around you. Um, there's also one where I like to stay, which included my favorite and the best pool I've ever stayed at. which is the Radisson at the port. There are a few other options, such as a Holiday Inn and a couple other hotels in Cape Canaveral. Most of the hotel options in Cape Canaveral are not that great. There are only a few there. However, these hotels tend to cost more money because they are that close to the port, and the closer you stay to the port, the more they're going to cost because people want to stay as close to the port as possible. So my suggestion is, when you do book your cruise out of Port Canaveral, book one of these hotels as soon as possible because they either more likely are going to sell out or they're going to be super duper expensive and they could far exceed your budget if you want to stay close to the port. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, the next option when cruising out of Port Canaveral, and this area by far has the most hotels, is Cocoa Beach. There are a few local hotels, but mostly chain brands. There are the Hampton Inn, Holiday Inn, Hilton, Days Inn. I stayed at La Quinta a few years ago, etc. There are plenty of hotel options. Now they're about further away from the port. They're about 15-20 minutes away because you aren't in the neighboring town of Cocoa Beach. You're not right there in Cape Canaveral, Port Canaveral, but you're about 15-20 minutes away. And the best options to get there from both, I'm gonna say, the is Uber. Now they're also shuttle to port hotels. Okay, they cost you about $10-15, but you gotta keep in mind that these shuttles don't really start until around 9:30, 10 a.m. So if you have a early check-in appointment, it's cutting it close that you could miss your check-in appointment because you don't know when they start and how many pickups they're going to have on the way to port and how many different drop-offs they have at different ships that day, depending how many ships they're in port. And Uber, by the way, other on the other hand, which I've done before, will only cost you $15 to $25. That's including tip, and then it's a straight shot right to the port. Unless I said the most it's going to take you is 20 minutes to get there, so you don't have to get up or leave as early. Okay, so that pretty much closes the book on Port Canaveral. Okay, now we're going to finish up with the Port of Miami. There are two main places to stay when you cruise out of Port of Miami. It's the city of Miami in the downtown area, which it's downtown Miami and Bayfront Park, and also there's the highly rising Brickell area, which has become a very popular area, and a bunch of hotels there. One of the fastest growing neighborhoods in Miami, and I've stayed in Brickell before. It's a very nice area, plenty of restaurants, plenty of hotels. So you have your choices if you want to stay in downtown Miami. Now I'm gonna say there's where you want to stay if you're staying in downtown Miami instead of Brickell. You want to stay in either Biscayne Boulevard or Bayfront Park, where the Intercontinental Hotel is on Bayfront Park. There's a Marriott, a Hilton, and a few other hotel options on Biscayne Boulevard, which is just as close to the port. Now, these hotels do have free shuttle service to the Port of Miami the morning of your cruise. However, you need to find out what time these shuttles start because they don't always start first thing in the morning. They start around 9, 10 in the morning. So you have to be careful with that depending on your check-in time. So when you check into your hotel, ask them about what time the next day do the shuttles to the cruise port start because that will give you a general idea on the best option to get to the cruise port itself if you're going to take the free shuttle or if you're going to take an Uber or Lyft, which should cost you no more than $25, if that much. If you're staying on Biscayne Boulevard or in Bayfront Park, it shouldn't cost you more than $10. And a regular taxi in this situation is an option too, especially from Biscayne Boulevard or Bayfront Park. That shouldn't cost you more than $10 at all. So keep in mind that when you do pay by taxi there, they prefer cash, not credit card, especially for a small fare like that. They want to see cash, so make sure you do have enough cash to pay for a taxi ride that you don't plan on putting everything on your credit card. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is when you stay in Miami Beach. There are several options where to stay. It's all what you're really looking for, to be honest. When you stay in Miami Beach, you have a decision if you want to stay in Mid Beach, you want to stay in South Beach, North Beach, and what you're really looking for. If you're somebody who likes to spend the day not going back and forth between the beach and the pool, you're more like someone who wants to stay in Mid Beach, or if you really want to stay in South Beach, you want a hotel that's on Collins Avenue, that's on the beach, such as the Lowe's, Royal Palms, Marseille, SLS, Any one of those hotels are nice hotels. I've stayed at them before. They're a bit more money, but anywhere you stay in South Beach is going to cost you money. If you're someone who doesn't need a hotel pool, there are plenty of Art Deco hotels all over South Beach on Ocean Drive, Collins, Washington. It's up to you. If you prefer to just lay on the beach and then swim in a pool, you can stay at one of the hotels on Ocean Drive and then just go to the beach, lay on the beach, walk around for a bit, and then go back to your hotel pool. Some of the hotels on Ocean Drive, they do have rooftop pools or elevated pools, so that's an option if you're someone who prefers just to spend the day at the pool. You're not a beach person, you prefer to stay at the pool. As I said, Ocean Drive is an option. There are plenty of hotels on Collins Avenue on the other side of the street that have pools. So it's all what you're really looking for. There are so many different options. But as I said, as in downtown Miami or Port Canaveral, book as soon as you can if you're going to stay in South Beach, because keep in mind, there's always something going on there, whether it's a sporting, it's some kind of musical festival, art show, spring break. There's always something going on in Miami. So book your hotel as soon as you can possibly can, because there's literally something always going on there, and the longer you wait, the more your hotel is going to cost. But you can get a hotel at a very good price as soon as you book. If you have QCon, if you book through hotels.com, if you have any type of savings when there's a certain time of the year, when around holiday weekends, if there's a sale, you can always find a way to save money on these hotels because there's so many different options. It's really what you are looking for. Um, Now, you have two options to get from Miami Beach to Port of Miami. One is a taxi cab, which I mentioned, that's going to be the most amount of money, and the way they've started raising prices, that's going to cost you about $30, $40, most likely, if not more. An Uber or Lyft from Miami Beach, no matter where Miami Beach you stay, will only cost you about $20 to $25, and that's including a tip. So keep that in mind, is that that is going to be your cheapest option from getting to Miami Beach to the Port of Miami. So, in closing, when you add up all the factors when cruising out of Port of Miami or Port Canaveral, you have to keep in mind how much a flight is going to cost, how much the hotel is going to cost, where you can stay, how far away from the port can you stay, where can you stay, which airport can you fly into, how many different flight options you have. You got to take this all into consideration and keep in mind that Port Canaveral is 45 minutes away from the busiest airport in Central Florida, the most busiest airport probably in the state of Florida, next to Miami International Airport. So keep that in mind. You have to take a shuttle. You have to Uber all over the place. The hotels are going to cost more money because everyone who's staying in those hotels are going on a cruise. That's why most people stay in the hotels in Cape Canaveral, especially in Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach, because you're going on a cruise. So keep that in mind, all these factors from getting from one part to the other. While if you cruise out of Miami, you have more options when it comes to flying. You have more options where to stay. You have more options on how to get from the airport to your hotel, which will save you a lot of money. It might take a little bit more time, but it will save you a lot of money. As I said, when you add up all the costs, and if you're looking at two cruises that leave on the same day, one out of Miami, one out of Port Canaveral, before you book, relatively close itineraries, add up all the costs and look at all the different options. You will see cruising out of Port Miami will cost you far less money than cruising out of Port Canaveral ever will. As I said, it can, with all the different options when compared going into Miami compared to Port Canaveral, with the way there's only one major airport you can fly into, only two cities, towns you can stay in when cruising out of Port Canaveral that are close enough to the port, how to get from the airport to the port that's not gonna, other than renting a car, that's not gonna, is still gonna be a pretty expensive option, okay? Keep all these factors in mind, and once you add up all the costs, cruising out of Port Canaveral is going to cost you more money than cruising out of Port of Miami, even though Miami sounds like, because it's a major city, it's more expensive. So once again, thank you for watching. I am Charlie. Well, thank you for watching Charlie's Cruise Tips and Reviews. And remember, be a cruiser.